Hello from outside the MKM Stadium, a little earlier than we would normally be here because Hull City's game against Watford was called off less than 20 minutes before kick-off. Not because of the pitch was playable, deemed playable by referee Anthony Backhouse, but because of the surrounding areas around the pitch that were deemed unsafe for the players and the match officials. So there we have it. The game called off just before kick-off, with a fair amount of supporters already in the stadium. Both teams were out warming up, and yeah, you can understand there was an element of frustration when poor old Steve Jordan had to read out that the game was off. Boos from all four corners of the stadium. What we know so far is the club have obviously confirmed that it was called off. And they will be putting some more information out in due course about what happens next in terms of tickets. There's no date yet for a rearranged game, but no doubt that will be a midweek in the near future. Unless the only way I think it could be a Saturday would be if both teams knocked out the FA Cup next weekend. Then obviously potentially there would be a free Saturday coming up, but we'll have to wait and see on that. I've spoke to the EFL. The EFL have confirmed that it was, the referee deemed it playable, but it was the surrounding areas. Now, we know that the weather's not been great. It's been freezing cold. It was, below zero. There's been snow around. It was really, really icy and frosty. But as I say, the undersoil heating had done its job. The pitch was, albeit it didn't look great, and it hasn't looked great for a couple of weeks, the pitch was playable. But I think if you were here, you would have seen right in front of the West Stand. And if you weren't here, I'm sure you know the layout of the stadium. In front of the West Stand, where the dugouts are, there's that big black kind of mesh, whatever it is, where there's the Hull City logo, the technical areas. That was covered in what looked, from where we were, covered in ice. I went up into the press box about 2 o'clock to see on the far side, on the kind of where the halfway line is, behind the halfway line on the edge of the pitch. There was a lot of ground staff. They'd got a Cala gas bottle and a burner. They were trying to clearly defrost parts of the edge of the pitch. Then they went to the south stand end of the ground, and kind of in between the corner flag and the goal post on the far side, they were trying to defrost it, but to no avail. At points, they did have the pitch lamps. If you've been in Hull at night over the last few months, you may have seen that big purple glow, almost like the Northern Lights, the glow of above the MKM Stadium. They are the pitch lamps that were bought from Holland a couple of years ago at great expense. They were on the side of the pitch trying to melt the ice and everything else around it. But look, it wasn't safe. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out that. The line that the match official has got to run up and down the touchline, that was dangerous. It only takes one of the players to going for a tackle or slip. You've got all sorts of problems. Taking throw-ins would have been impossible as well. So on that basis, I've got no issue with the game being called off. In that sense, my question would be, well, why did we not defrost? Why did we not get? I mean, I'm not an expert, so I apologise if this sounds a bit stupid. But why wasn't rock salt put down? Why did we not try and defrost it earlier in the day? This hasn't come as a surprise. I know the ground staff were on site from early this morning trying to get it ready, get the pitch, as I say, was playable all the way through. And I don't doubt that they were doing what they were doing to try and get the areas around the pitch. As I say, there was nothing to do. There was no. It's not like there was 10 foot of snow outside the stadium, and the areas leading to the MKM Stadium were treacherous, and it was called off for supporter safety. It was nothing like that. It was all to do with the issues around the side of the pitch for player safety, etc. So that is what it is. I think the big frustration will be the timing of it. Ultimately, the referee, in conjunction with stadiums, the SMC and the safety officer, the people around that deal with that decision was made. But it's not ideal, and you know, for those of us that are here to work, it's annoying, it's frustrating, it's inconvenient. I get all of that, but ultimately we're paid to be here. It's the supporters that I feel for. Particularly, you know, the Watford fans have obviously come a long way. It's not an easy journey up from Watford. And obviously the City fans, I know somebody got in touch with me and said I've come from Geneva. There's City fans that travel an awful long way to get to the. Not everybody lives 5 minutes from the stadium. So there's an awful lot of people that have paid a lot of money to get here and be here, and then to be told to go home with what just don't. Well, I think City put their statement out at 2:42, 18 minutes before kickoff. You know, it was talked about before, but the feeling before the game was that, you know, the game would go ahead, that everybody was doing, both managers, as I understand it, wanted the game to go ahead. Both teams were out warming up, goalkeepers had been out, both teams were out on the pitch. It felt like the game would go ahead, that they would find a way, even if it meant delaying the kickoff by 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever, to get this game. Because the last thing anybody wants is this game to be delayed, to be rescheduled for midweek in February or March time. But alas, that's what's happened. And ultimately, as frustrating as it is, you've got to do what you can do to get, you've got to protect people. It's about player safety, and that is the key. That is the key thing. You know, we're in an entertainment business, but the players have got to be safe, and we can't have anything going wrong with that. And so I get that, but the timing of it is shambolic, quite frankly, and that should not have been allowed to happen. It should not have got to 2:42 with fans in the ground, players warming up, where the game is then called off. But you know, that is what it is. So it's up to City now to explain how this happened, why this happened, what was the reason for it, what steps were taken to try and avoid this happening, and more importantly, what happens next. What happens for those people, you know, that travelled here, you know, in terms of the rearranged fixture, whenever that's going to be, you know, either free tickets or discounted tickets. You know, Hull City are a good club. They do things the right way. You know, they look after their supporters. They look after away fans. We know that by the way they treat them, the ticket prices. So I suspect, I have no doubt that the club will be working hard over the next 24, 48 hours to put it right and do the right thing moving forward. So not much more we can say, really. You know, if I'm being cynical, not cynical is the wrong term. If I'm looking for the positive, potentially for the rearranged game, City might have one or two players back. They wouldn't be able to play any new signings, I don't think, under the EFL rules, but they might have one or two players back. Of course, there's no guarantee that having, I don't know, Lundstrom, Matarzo, Gelhardt, Ryan Giles back in the team guarantees that they would have won they will win a future game. Of course it doesn't, but it certainly makes them an awful lot stronger. Now there's absolutely no suggestion that there's any funny business. I'm pointing that out. I know people will jump to conclusions, and you look at the Portsmouth game earlier on and you think, well, 10 injuries, they've just been tonked 5-0, they're playing Ipswich. Did Portsmouth do everything to get their game on? That's what one or two cynics might suggest, but I don't think there's anything here from City's point of view. You know, ultimately, this looks ridiculous. This is embarrassing for the club. It's going to cost them an awful lot of money in terms of the rearranged game, in terms of, you know, today it will cost the club a lot of money for this postponement. So, and I think, as I say, both managers, particularly Sergei Yakovich, wanted the game on, but it isn't, and that I'm not sure there's a huge amount more that we can say apart from the game being called off. So there we go. Right, let's take some questions before we go. Let's scroll back to the top because there were a lot of questions. A couple of interesting points on the team sheet, by the way. We obviously didn't get to see it in action, but Cody Drame was back in the team. First start, it would have been a first start for him since the defeat at Derby on November the 4th. Given what the manager has said in the past few days about Cody and about his potential future, interesting to see him back in the team. He would have played at right back with Louis Coyle on the left. There was also a return to the squad for Matty Jacob. He's back from his loan spell at Reading. He was injured at Reading. That's why that was cut short. He was back on the bench as an alternative option. So a couple of interesting things there. But obviously, alas, we never got to see Cody in action, which is a real shame. Joel and Darla there were 3 changes. Drame was in, Joel and Darla was back in, as was Amir Hadzimatovic. They were back in to the team, obviously at the expense of let me think. Darko JB was dropped to the bench. He was dropped to the bench. Akin Famewo was dropped to the bench as well. So yeah, it's frustrating. But that was the team. That was the team news. Alex says at least we kept a clean sheet. Yeah. Josh, feel for the Watford fans. Yeah. Look, I feel for all fans really, because there were City fans that would have covered. You know, they would have come a fair old way as well. So it's just not ideal for anybody. Nobody wants to. You don't want to make the effort to turn up to a game, sit in your seat, and then it be called off 20 minutes from kickoff, do you? So it's not ideal for anybody. Nobody wins out of today. Mikey, positives of players get some rest and time to sort out some injuries. Feel for the Watford fans. Yeah, well, look, they go from looking really leggy and jaded on New Year's Day against Stoke to having basically 2 weeks without a game, a championship game, because obviously they then go to Southampton, who I think are being thumped 4-0 at Middlesbrough in a couple of weeks' time. We've obviously got the cup game here against Blackburn next week, which some could have said that was an inconvenience in between the schedule that they've had with the injuries that they've had. But actually now the Blackburn game becomes quite important, because while they're going 2 weeks without a league game, it gives them an option to play other players that need minutes. So that's a good thing. Perhaps the fact they've not played today changes Jakirovic's approach in the FA Cup. He'll obviously be mindful of players for the Southampton game the following week, but he'll you know, rather than go 2 weeks without any game, that Blackburn game gives him an opportunity to get minutes into players. The likes of, you know, Famewo might play again. Lundstrom hopefully will be back in training. He can play. Joel and Darla, JB, you know, Destam will get some minutes. There's other players that need minutes as well, whilst also getting rest into the likes of Louis Coyle and Charlie Hughes and Regan Slater, McBurney, Liam Miller, players that have played a lot of football over Christmas, and in the case of Miller and McBurney coming back from injuries. So if there is something positive to come out of this not playing today, it is the fact that, you know, it's a welcome rest at a good time. More questions. Alex, should be doing free travel for the Watford fans for the rearranged game. I've just said that to Alex Burgess, actually. We were chatting in the car park, and while it's not my money, the club have got their own concerns and issues. I think, you know, you've got to do something for the supporters. I think what that looks like, only time will tell. But I think the club, I feel like the club would want to do something as by way of apology, because while it's not their fault, I say it's not their fault. However this decision has been reached, whether it's the security staff or the ground safety staff, the referee and the officials, the EFL in conjunction with the match officials on the ground, whoever's got to this decision, it's ultimately the fans that are the ones out of pocket that have paid to come to watch a game of football and haven't seen a game of football. So, as I say, I've got no doubt that the club will, when they've gone through the process that they need to go through, I have no doubt that the club, of all the clubs in the Championship, I would hang my hat on the whole City doing the right thing here. Let's see. Let's have a look at what we've got. Tom, Adrian out with the sprinklers last night's the rumour. I'm not sure he was. But yeah, there's always loads of conspiracy theories, and that's the beauty of them. They are just conspiracy theories. Adam, will the game go ahead at the weekend against Blackburn? Absolutely no reason why not. Hopefully they can get the hairdryers on the perimeter and get it warm. But in fairness, the pitch could, although both sets of players were warm, well, the Watford players and both goalkeepers were warming up, or warming up's not the right term, but they were out training on the pitch after the decision was made and most fans had gone home. But, you know, the pitch will benefit from another week's rest, that is for sure. But yeah, no concerns about the Blackburn game at this stage, of course. Lee, bit of a late decision to call off. You could say that. Lots of frustration and feel for the fans. Yeah, said that already. It's not ideal. It's frustrating. We should never get to a stage where a game is being called off 20 minutes before kickoff, unless you have a case where suddenly there's a massive deluge of snow and nobody can move, and I just feel that I feel that it wasn't necessary. The caveat to what I'm saying is I'm not qualified. I'm not a qualified groundsman, and I'm not a safety official. From where I looked, it seemed if we'd have planned better, if we'd have had better things in place, it could have been dealt with. But as I say, I don't want to say something that is incorrect. I don't want to say something that is ill-founded or ill thought through. But to a layman, to somebody as unintelligent as I am, I just don't think it's a good look for the football club, and I don't think it's a good look for football that we're calling the game off 20 minutes before kick-off for some ice on a like foul or whatever it is around the side of the pitch. It feels to me like that is something that's avoidable. But as I say, I caveat that with probably people far more qualified than I will have a reason as to why we're in the state that we are, and hopefully at some point in the not too distant future we hear something. Now, I think part of the problem here is City don't have a traditional chief executive to perhaps come out and speak to the media and then in turn speak to the fans and explain what's happened. They don't have Jim Rodwell was here before. Obviously we had Tan Kesler. I'm not saying that they were the best things at their job, the best qualified at their job, but I kind of feel that one of those two may have been able in a position to come out at the end of the game and explain to the masses why we are where we are. The club don't really have that, and as such, there was no post-match press conference. Jurkovic wasn't put up to speak to the media, and as kind of annoying as that was, I also understand it. He's the manager of the football team. He's not duly qualified to come out and answer as to why this didn't happen or that didn't happen. So, and it would put him in an awkward position, in an uncomfortable position, a position that perhaps he's not really qualified to talk about. So, as annoying as it was, I do understand it, but I do know the club are working on putting something out in the near future to explain kind of what's gone wrong, if you like, or what's happened. How did we get to everybody being in their seats at 2:42? And in fact, it wasn't. It was later, because the statement came out on social media and on the website quite a while before the announcement was made to the crowd that was still in the stadium. So I think, again, that's something that needs to be looked at. Could we have, as a collective, and I'm not calling out anybody here, as a collective between the football club, the EFL and the other authorities, could we have could this have happened earlier? Could we have got that decision out at 2 o'clock, at 1 o'clock, 1:30, at 12 o'clock? Could we have said at 12 o'clock there's some doubt, rather than everybody trekking? That could have. I just don't know. I think in situations like this we need to learn from it and avoid it happening again, because I just think it could have that decision could have been made a bit earlier, and caused less inconvenience to a lot of people. But as I say, hopefully that'll come out in the wash as to why we are where we are, and we got the that decision so late. Trevor, only consolation is more recovery time for our injured players. Yeah, absolutely. Assuming that the game isn't scheduled for a midweek in January, which I'd be surprised given there's not many midweeks in January, if any. It's going to be February or March time. Hopefully, Joff's back. Ryan Giles is back. There's 2. Lundstrom's back. There's 3 of your first team players. Balloumi's obviously out of the question. Maybe Elliot Matazo's back in if it's March, maybe Matazo's back available by that point. We just don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But as I say, City could have their full strength team available for a game against Watford in March and still lose. So there's no guarantees. They could have won the game today. So it's football. You can't predict it. I bet I get half an hour out of this. I'm trying not to, because I've got a paper to fill on with no content. Andy says, I was informed by Steward that the players didn't want to play. EFL said it was playable. Only Ollie came out to see the City fans. Hughes already on his way home as we left. That's Andy, that's your obviously speculation, what you've heard. All the players were out warming up, so there was a will from both sides to get the game on. Why was Palmer not on the team sheet? Well, he was in the squad, wasn't he? Unless I missed that, I'm pretty sure he was listed on the bench. Peter, main concern for the fourth official. Yeah, I mean, look, we've all seen the pictures. It was frosty down there, and it wasn't safe in front of the dugouts. Dave asks, Dave says, I think that's the problem people have. So the problem people have is, why was it so late? Why was it after the child mascots to play before, to warm up? Not safe to play the game. But, well, the mascots were on the pitch, warming up, obviously kicking the ball on the pitch. They weren't running around on the side of the pitch. So, I think that, look, everybody's talking about the timing of it, and that is the big frustration. And that's what the club will have to answer in due course. Kieran, not blessing in disguise, not the only fixture to be postponed. Yeah, there was a few games postponed. Obviously, the Sheffield United game against Oxford was called off at Bramall Lane, and the Portsmouth one against Ipswich at Fratton Park. But yeah, it is what it is. There we go. Vicky asks, why was Drama in? Thought he wanted out. Was someone there to watch him play? Well, we said the other day that City have got so many injuries, they need Drama playing. He's a good player at this level. They need him available, and he's obviously recovered from his little back problem or hip problem or whatever he had over Christmas. He was available, and without Ryan Giles, City have got a fudge it, and it would have meant Louis Coyle playing at left back. But Drame is more than capable of playing right back, and so I had no problem with him coming back in the team. He's obviously had the conversation with the manager. They've found the way forward. Fine. That's it. Steve, any update on the new signings? Well, we talked about Kieran Dow. We've talked about Seny Dieng, but it completely relies on getting one or two players out. And until they can get players out, they're going to struggle to bring players in. So I know they're going to have conversations with Matt, the EFL about the situation. But as it stands, it's one in, one out. And until they've got somebody out, they can't bring somebody in. So yes, they want Dieng's lined up. Yes, they want Kieran Dow. They want one or two others as the window progresses. But it's a case of getting players out. David Akintola could go. Brandon Williams, maybe there's one or two others perhaps that they might look to try and move on to free up space. But let's see what happens over the next few days in terms of the transfer window. Danny, it's poor. Surely questions have to be asked about the ground staff in particular and what could have been done a lot earlier in the day. The whole situation's been an absolute shambles. Yeah, the questions are there. They have been asked. They are being asked. So we just wait on the answers now. But I can't say any more than I agree with everybody's annoyance. Everybody's made the effort to get into the ground on it's freezing. Some people have come through, difficult weather conditions to get here, and have been left disappointed. And also have paid an awful lot of money to be here. That's the other thing. People have paid a lot of money for their tickets, for their travel, for the food and all that sort of stuff, and have been left shortchanged. But as I say, without wanting to hammer the club, who, are going to be hammered by a lot of people, it's easy to have a pile on. But, I'm convinced, and I know they'll try and put it right where they can. Tom, chances that we play some more senior players in the Cup? I would suspect so now, yeah. They'll need, I think, had the game have gone ahead as normal today, I think that team against Blackburn is different to what we might see now, because one or two players might need minutes. One or two other players that he might not have played against Blackburn might now play just to keep them ticking over. So yeah, I think there's no doubt it might change. I don't think it'll change them massively, because after the cup game you've then got Southampton, long trek. You've then got Preston away on a Tuesday night. You've got a 3-game week coming up. So I still think he'll try and manage it carefully, but I wouldn't be surprised if it changes his team selection a little bit. What else have we got? Richard says, whilst player safety is important, fans are just irrelevant if there are any issues. Say 5 hours before kick-off, the supporters should be under consideration. Yeah, they should be. And I don't believe that they were forgotten in this. I know it seems like they were, but ultimately they have to make a decision. They being the club, the safety people, the EFL and the referee. They have to make a decision. And if that means that the game's called off 5 minutes into the game, then unfortunately, as annoying and frustrating as it is, that's safety of the players and the match officials is paramount, and they've got to do what they've got to do. Like I say, it doesn't change the fact it's bloody annoying and that we've all trekked up here today and got in the ground. But you have to look after the players that are out there playing. How would we feel if the game we decide to play the game? I don't know. Liam Miller races onto a ball, slips on some ice off the pitch, and he does his knee. He does his ACL again, and his other knee, and he's out for a year. How would we feel then if that happens, or that happens to a Watford player, or a match official? The linesman is running to try and keep up with Liam Miller, bombing down the flank. He slips over. He goes and bangs his head. Something bad happens. I know that can still happen anyway, but we have to be sensible in these situations and say, if it's not safe, we can't proceed. Even if that annoys 20,000 people and it, inconveniences 20,000 people that have paid to get, train travel here today or have flown from Europe to be here. I understand that, completely get it. But people's health and safety is paramount. The biggest question I have, and I think a lot of people will have, is why did it come this late? What was going to change between 1:30 and 3 o'clock? What was going to change from 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock? If we knew at 12 o'clock there was a problem, why did we leave it until 2:45 to make the announcement? That's the bit I find hard to understand, and that's the bit that the football club will have to come up with an answer to satisfy people. And it may not even satisfy people, and people may go, well, that's a load of rubbish. That's a cop-out. That's nonsense. Obviously, people will make their own assessment. Tiger Tube, hope there's a full analysis of blowtorch and ice brushing techniques on the podcast on Monday. We've got a special guest coming on to talk about ice. So get your questions in now. Liam, ridiculous to call it off at 2:45. Felt sorry for the Watford fans. Yep, don't disagree with that. Daniel says today's done us a huge favour given the injuries. I bet Sergei will be relieved that this has been called off. When he puts his trotters up tonight with a glass of wine, he might well do, but I think he wanted the game to go ahead. So I think he would rather have got today's game out of the way rather than have to come back for a midweek game at some point in the near future. Chris, another one that says it's a joke cancelling the game 20 minutes before kickoff. Should have cancelled it at lunchtime before people got to the ground. Surely in this day and age they could have got rid of the ice around the technical area. I echo what you've said, and they are the questions that we'll need answering as to why we get to this stage in 2026, why we're struggling to defrost a little bit of ice from around the pitch side perimeter. But it may be far more complicated and detailed and scientific than I'm giving it credit for. Phil says, I spent a tenner on the half-time draw. I ain't seen that again. I can't really say anything about that. How was my drink after the Stoke game, Adam? Yeah, I need a stiff drink tonight after that, to be fair. Danny, another week close to Galhot coming back. Yeah, that did occur to me, trotting down those steps at the top of the West End. I said on the radio before kickoff, Lewis, I wondered if delaying the kickoff was a sensible option. Clearly it wasn't. Clearly, even if we get going at 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock, maybe that's better, get the game played. But again, maybe there's questions about, bus drivers, time, staff, working times. I don't know. To me, it seems straightforward. If we can delay it by an hour or so, can we fix the problem? But it wasn't getting any warmer, in fairness. So it's never as straightforward as we like to think it would be, unfortunately. Michael, food has got to be sold. What are the players' thoughts? Few of ours look livid. Did they think about trying to delay kickoff? I would imagine that they tried to do what they had to do. And the players are here. The players are warmed up. They want the game to go ahead. It's not, the players don't want to have to faff about going back in the changing room and driving home and having to do this all again. That doesn't help anybody. So the players would have wanted the game to go ahead, and they're out there ready to go. They've gone through all the pre-match rituals, pre-match prep. They would have wanted to play the game, so they would have been unhappy as well. Danny's letting the fans come and buy food and drink, then call the game off just before kickoff. I know that's a cynical point of view, but what I would say is this does not help the football club, because when they have to open this place on a Tuesday night in however many weeks' time, it's going to cost them a lot of money. So yes, it might look at it, you think, well, they've made money today because they've sold 10,000 portions of chips or X amount of Cadbury's hot chocolate. They're going to have to effectively open the ground for free in a few weeks' time and give tickets away for free while still paying the staff that were paid today. So, you know, while it's easy to be cynical and say the club have made money out of today, they haven't, because they're going to have to, they still have to pay their staff today. They still have to buy the food for today. They're still going to have to do that for the return game. All the match day staff that have been employed today are going to have to be employed for the return or the next game against Watford, and they won't be able to charge for ticket prices, or they're going to have to charge, even if they don't give away free tickets. Let's say they do it, I'm speculating here, by the way. Let's say they do everything for a £5. It's going to cost them more than that to put the game on. It's like Blackburn next week. It's going to cost them to put the game on, but yet it'll cost them more to put the game on against Blackburn than what the crowd will be in attendance for Blackburn in the FA Cup. So, you know, I get the cynicism, but the club will lose out from this financially and from their credibility as well. This isn't a good look for the football club. So I don't think they win from today. Let's have a look. Vicky, I'm finding out on social media due to the poor signal in the ground. Yeah, I think that is the annoying thing. The announcement was quite late. It came after the announcement on social media on the website. I think that is, I think letting people know in the stadium first it should have happened, but again, it's easy in hindsight. Let's have a look. What else have we got? Christopher, over from Australia and so disappointed we've missed the match. Yeah, as I say, unfortunately, that's the risk. We always have any risk going to a football match. Any game can be called off for any number of reasons. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does happen, it is inherently frustrating. So, sympathies, Christopher. You've come all the way from Australia to see City, and you've not seen them. So yeah, big sympathies about that. What else have we got? Saw Crooks at 12:45. Why weren't the players? Well, obviously the players arrived at the stadium as normal. They're out warming up as normal, expecting the game to go ahead. And all our information throughout the afternoon was, yes, there could be a problem, but we're doing everything we can. There's a will from both sides to get the game on. We're doing what we can. So yeah, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what comes out in the wash in due course. Yeah, sorry about my Sean Dyche impression. I've been a bit under the weather for the last few weeks, so and I'm gasping for a drink. Luke says, made an hour and a half journey for the game to be cancelled. Yeah, sympathies. As I've just said from Chris, who's come from Australia, everybody's got their own tale of woe about how far they've come, how much they've paid. It is unfortunate, and we're just going to have to see what the club do in terms of recompense for that. Let's have a look. Yeah, Middlesbrough won 4-0. Yeah, Akintola could go. Yeah, Tom, if you melt the ice, you have to move the water. The situation's difficult, isn't it? And I don't. We'll have to, as I said before a million times, we're going to have to wait and see what the explanation is. It is what it is. They did everything they could. They were trying to defrost it, and ultimately to no avail. They tried to get the game on, and as I said before, everybody wanted the game to go ahead. Danny, will they play any players in the FA Cup they're looking to move on, or will they protect them from being injured? It's a good question. Well, Cody Drame's got interest, but they were going to play him today. So I think it's a case of, today was a case of needs must. I would be surprised if they risk too many players that they think they can get rid of. But who knows what will happen in the next 4 or 5 days. It's a week till we play Blackburn. You know, who's to say that 1 or 2 players might not have gone by then, because they want to get players in sooner rather than later. And the longer it goes on, the longer it goes on, the greater risk it is that the players you want, you miss out on because they go out elsewhere. You know, if Hull City say, hang on, we'll sign you, but we've got to wait for somebody else to go. Who's to say that that player? Who's to say that David Akintola doesn't go, and then they can't sign Kieran Dowell? So, yes, let's wait and see what happens over the next few days. Have you seen Borough's pitch? Says Harry. It's worse than ours. Someone needs to be reprimanded for such a massive mistake. Again, I would expect that would be dealt with. I can't read it right now, but I'm seeing that City have just put out another statement apologising for what has happened. Is there any chance the EFL will award Watford the points? Luke, no, that won't happen. I spoke to the EFL this afternoon. The decision was made on player safety. So, you know, if they had concerns about player safety, they can't play the game. So there'll be nothing like that. And Simon's right. Ultimately, it comes down to the referee's decision, and he makes that decision in conjunction with, you know, the various people needed. You know, the safety officer, who said to me slipped over at one point, which is kind of ironic. But yeah, it's the referee's decision. Comment there for getting the hot air politicians around the edge of the stadium. We'll make that. We'll suggest that for next time. Right. Yeah, David. Comment for. I'm a bit sorry. Feel a bit sorry for Steve Jordan being called a W something by the Watford fans. It wasn't his fault. No. Yes, it wasn't Steve's fault. He was just the bearer of bad news, and I think he took shelter in the tunnel when he made the announcement to stop, so he wasn't pelted with wet fish and things like that. Yeah, Danny says as soon as the players went off, we knew it was over. Yeah, I think as soon as the Watford players were headed over to their fans, we knew that was the end of it. What do we know about the new centre-back from Leeds? He's a young lad. He's 20, highly rated by Leeds last year. I think he was on the bench for Leeds 17 or 18 times. Obviously not progressed in that sense. I think they view him as a bit like Cahan McCarthy, who has obviously done really well in and around the squad as well. So he's one for the future. He's only 20, but he'll be training. He'll train with the first team, and if he's deemed good enough, he'll be given a chance. So that's one to keep an eye on. William, we're out of the playoff places now. Well, I guess that was always going to happen with team. You know, Stoke were winning as well. Stoke won, Millwall got points. You know, results are what they are, but we haven't played, so it's not the end of the world. Right. Yeah, Harry, I'm just saying that City have released a statement. Luke, what positions do we want in the window? I think we've covered that already, Luke. They've obviously signed a central defender, albeit a young one. I think they'd like another midfielder as cover. Kieran Dowell is one we've talked about, and they want a goalkeeper. It's not going to be. I think if you're expecting 15 signings, you're going to be disappointed. It's going to be a more careful window, and one they've got to be really smart with. But as I keep saying, it's got to be one in, one out. Right, let's have a look. Right, that's all the comments. I'm going to call it a day here at the MKM Stadium, and we'll have the podcast with you, as I say, with some experts on ice and heating, hopefully, on tomorrow morning with the gang. And then obviously we'll be building up to the FA Cup game against Blackburn Rovers here next Sunday afternoon. Thanks for watching, everybody. Happy New Year, and we will have plenty more from the fallout of today's game over the next few days. So have a good evening. If you're back at work tomorrow, go well, and we'll see you again soon. Up the Tigers.